Alrighty, so today I'm going to be drawing with a Milwaukee Paint Marker for the first time. In specific today, I'm going to be drawing with and giving a light review to the Milwaukee Inkzall Liquid Paint Marker, which is a marker from a brand that isn't known for markers. Milwaukee is a hardware company. They make like toolboxes, and I think they make drills and cups that also fit onto the boxes. They're very expensive as well. Milwaukee products are pretty pricey, far out of my price range, and the only thing I can afford is a pen, frankly put. The only thing I can afford from Milwaukee is a pen. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this pen is. Is this pen, which is from a company that is not known for their pens, actually going to be any good at drawing? Well, I don't know, but I'm looking forward to finding out. But of course, I do want to acknowledge that this pen is really not meant to be drawn with. It's meant to be used for marking on wood, metal, pipe, stuff like that kind of thing. It's meant to write measurements and little notes on like wood and stuff like that kind of thing for future reference. That's what it's actually made for, but I'm going to be letting you all know if it's actually any good to draw with in today's video. I do suppose, without further ado, I should probably, before I go ahead and get the pen all out of the packaging, I should probably go ahead and go over the packaging itself. Then after that, I should probably go ahead and get the pen all out, let you guys know what it looks like, what the quality of it is like, what it feels like, what the weight of it is like, and everything like that. Then after that, I should probably go ahead and actually get to drawing with it, and I should probably go ahead and let you guys know how it actually is to draw with. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys my final thoughts on this pen right here, and I'm going to give it a rating as well. But first off, as said, we got to start with the packaging, which is a more informational piece of packaging than not. Due to the red background on the packaging, it is much more distinct than not, to say the least. And in the upper corner up here, we can see it just says Milwaukee right there in the classic Milwaukee logo. There's a little bit of like an arrow under it and whatnot kind of thing, and then there's like some numbers to the side right there. Below the Milwaukee logo itself, it just says Inkzall right there, which is like the actual name of the pen from what I know. And then under that, it just says Liquid Paint Marker, and that's all in white. But there is a little bit of a sort of black fade drop shadow going under it that makes the text just look a little bit more distinct than not, I definitely have to say. Under that, there's a white line, and then it just says Inkzall in, basically just says what it says right here in two other languages, in Spanish, I believe, and also in French. So it says Marcador Inkzall de Pictura Liquida, and then it says Marcor Pintura Liquida Inkzall, or something like that. I probably butchered those pronunciations quite badly. If y'all speak Spanish or if y'all speak French, I do apologize. I don't know how to speak either of those languages. But I'm getting more jumbled up. You know, it just says this text right here in different languages. Moving on to other parts of the packaging, we can see it just says that this pen supposedly has the best performance on the toughest spots. And then we can see an image of it performing the best on the toughest spots right below that on a piece of metal. And then it says the same thing in two different languages, once again in Spanish and French. And then it just says writes on the dirtiest, hottest, roughest surfaces. And it says that again in Spanish and French. And then it says longest lasting mark in harsh environments. And then it says that again in Spanish and French. And then it says 2 times faster dry time. And then it says that again in Spanish and French in black rather than being in white. And all of this text on this side has a sort of very light fade black drop shadow to it. That just makes the text just pop a little bit more so than not. We can see down here there's a little bit of a white background rather than normal red, and it just says liquid paint right there. And then above that we can see it just says liquid paint in Spanish and French. To the side of that, it just says medium point / chisel white paint. So this is a white paint marker, and it says reversible. I don't know exactly what reversible means, in all honesty, but I'm sure it means something, I guess. And then we can see to the side of the marker that's right here, we can see there's like a list of different things that this marker is supposed to be able to write really well on. We can see like some pipe, some PVC pipe, some other pipe, another pipe, metal, wood, concrete brick. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to the front of the packaging, in all honesty. It's pretty much just informational, looks much more bold than not due to the red background, and honestly, this is really big packaging. It's unnecessarily large, but maybe they're trying to make it unnecessarily large on purpose, so this pen does not get shoplifted all that much. Milwaukee products are quite expensive. I don't know how expensive this pen was, in all honesty, I've forgotten, but I imagine if this pen was in smaller packaging, it would be easier to shoplift, and so that's probably why it's got much larger packaging than not, if I had to guess, even though it does seem like it's a little bit of a waste. But, without further ado, let's go and take a look at the back of the packaging. We can see the back of the packaging is, once again, informational. We get a white background with just black and white print rather than full color print like the front. We just see it just says Milwaukee right there in black. And we just get the same numbers we got on the front of the packaging on the back as well. And it just says 10-second dry time, water and UV resistant markings. And it just says marks on surfaces up to 300 Fahrenheit right there. And then under that, it just says you got to shake it up and actually get the ink in there and everything like that kind of thing. So you got to activate the valve to write. So you've got to kind of press it down and then kind of shake it up, I do suppose, is really what you got to do. And then after that, it's supposed to write. So you do have to activate this like any normal paint marker, like a Posca or a Sharpie paint marker. You do have to activate it beforehand. Below this, it just says Milwaukee Tool, Brookfield, Wisconsin. I almost said Wyoming. No, that's W-Y. W-I is Wisconsin. 53005 USA, MilwaukeeTool.com. Why isn't Milwaukee Tool actually in Milwaukee? I'm not sure why. Maybe Brookfield is a... maybe it's I don't even know where Milwaukee is, in all honesty. I don't know. I know it ain't in Ohio. I don't think, at least. But maybe Brookfield is like a suburb of Milwaukee. I'm not sure, in all honesty. But it says that right there. Then it says engineered by Milwaukee Tool, ink made in Italy, marker assembled in China. And then it says that in both Spanish and French. It says xylene-free, low chloride, non-toxic. And then it says you should wear a face mask when using this. And has a little bit of recycle symbol, barcode for industrial use only. Keep out of reach of children. I think I'm gonna give this to children to use and whatnot, kind of thing. Just because it says that. In all honesty, no, I'm just kidding. But that's pretty much all there is to the packaging. Overall, nothing too much going on by any means, if I do say so myself, but overall, not bad packaging. It's just very informational, to say the least. Before I go ahead and get the packaging all opened up, I want to first off go and grab myself a little bit of a screenshot. So I'm going to go ahead and just lay out my hands just like this and just leave this in the center, just so I can grab a little bit of a screenshot real quick. And hopefully that will do as a screenshot. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get this all opened up if I possibly can. It is probably going to be a pain. I hate these sorts of packaging where it's cardboard with plastic on. It's always a pain. I don't think I need to use a knife, though. That's good, because I'd have to use a Milwaukee knife on it. I say as I don't want a Milwaukee knife. You know what? I'm actually just going to use a knife on it. I'm actually just going to use a knife. And I was about to use a knife on my desk, but that one's not very sharp. I'm going to use this one instead. I've got a Kershaw. I think there's a scallion with me today. It's a 1620 FL. I like this knife quite a bit. Let's see if I can actually get this opened up. Just like that. Definitely try to make it hard to get out of the pack. It's probably to prevent shoplifting once again, if I had to guess. And there we go. The pen is now all out. I'm going to go ahead and put this trash all to the side. I'm going to go and just clean that off real quick. Go ahead and put that back in my pocket. I like my knife quite a bit. It works quite well. Plus, it flips out very easily and satisfyingly. I'm a big fan of it, to say the least. Got to flex my knife just a little bit. Highly recommend the Kershaw Scallion. I'm a big fan of it. But let's go and actually take a look at the pen now. And the pen as a whole, it's got some weight to it. It's very unevenly weighted, I definitely have to say. Just get the cap off real quick just to feel how it would feel with the cap off. It's a little bit more weighted towards the bottom with the cap off, but oddly enough with the cap on, I think it's probably just because it's liquid paint. It's kind of unevenly weighted, depending on like how you're holding it. Like if you're holding it like this, most of the weight's towards the bottom. If you're holding it like this, it's kind of like very odd and unevenly weighted. If you're holding it like this, most of the weight is towards the end. So just because this is a liquid paint pen, it is a little bit unevenly weighted depending on how you hold it. That definitely did throw me off just for a moment until I remembered this is a liquid paint pen. Just looking at this pen though, it definitely does look a little bit different than, excuse me, than some other liquid paint pens on the market. Many other liquid paint pens are kind of just one flat sort of plastic slab, and there's really nothing too much going on. I'm just going to use a normal Sharpie as an example, even though this is not liquid paint. But most liquid paint pens are just one flat plastic slab, but no, not this one. It's actually got sort of like indents in it and stuff like that. And just feeling those indents, or inside those indents, that feels like metal. That actually feels like metal. I thought that these were just going to be like little plastic stickers kind of put in there, but no, I actually think it's metal with a plastic wrap around it, because this actually feels cold. It feels like metal, which is very interesting if I do say so myself. Not going to complain about that by any means, but definitely very interesting. We can see right here on the red metal, it just says Milwaukee right there with the arrow under it, and then it just has the product code right there. It just says Inkzall right there, liquid paint, xylene free. On the other side, we can see the two exact same sort of little indents right here. Just says Milwaukee, Inkzall right there, just a little bit smaller than it says it right here. And then it just has, like, you got to shake it up, you got to press it down, and that's just basically just how to use it and whatnot. On this side, on the plastic, it does have some little indents for text and whatnot. It just says industrial use only, keep out of reach of children. That's probably due to the toxicity of the paint itself. And of course, the plastic that kind of goes around the metal in the center of the pen itself is all black. We can see there's a little bit of an area right here, which kind of goes up. Not exactly sure why they have that. Maybe that's just sort of a thing for getting this off of the mold easier or something like that kind of thing. Not exactly sure, although I'm pretty sure that's probably what this is right here. So I'm not exactly sure what this is doing, but overall, you know, it's, excuse me, it's not a bad looking pen. Really, the thing that really throws me off about this pen is the white cap. But the white cap does make sense because that does represent what color the actual pen itself is. And the cap is all plastic. We can see there's a little bit of a shirt thing right here. How easily does this actually lock onto a shirt? Just test it real quick. Locks on pretty easily if I do say so myself. No issues at all. We can see it just says Milwaukee right there, printed on the white itself. Then we can see like two little ridges right here, or sorry, three little ridges right here that are just gripped to help you pull it off and whatnot. And on the other side, it's the exact same, just like that. Nothing too much going on with the cap itself, pretty basic as a whole. Let's go ahead and pull that off and talk about ergonomics now. The ergonomics of this pen are, you know, I was really not sure how the ergonomics of this pen were going to be with these sort of indents. But you know, it's actually not bad. With the liquid ink and how it kind of flows around and whatnot kind of thing, and when you're pressing down like this, it's mainly towards the end, so this is definitely not really a pen that is made for drawing. It's really made for writing, unsurprisingly. I don't know why I have to keep clearing my throat, but I do. But with the weight kind of, even with the weight kind of all the way towards the bottom, this is still very easy to hold. It's actually quite ergonomic. I think that's really in part due to the fact that this is a much thicker pen than not. It's much thicker than like a normal Sharpie fine point, or sorry, ultra fine point or something like that kind of thing. It's very thick, and so it fits in my hand very well. And the little ridges that kind of go down right here fits my finger very well as well. And honestly, this little area right here, my thumb fits in it very well as well. If this was just one flat thing, I actually don't think it would be as ergonomic. As a whole, this is actually a pretty comfortable pen to hold. It's not the most comfortable pen of all time, but due to the size of it, due to the size of this pen, you don't have to grip it too hard or anything like that kind of thing. My finger fits in very well right there. The ergonomics of this pen are quite nice, to say the least. And honestly, I like holding this pen. It's pretty easy to hold as a whole, which is exactly what you want from a pen. You just want to whip out, write some stuff, and then put it back. That's exactly what you want. You want it to be very easy to hold. You don't want it to be awkward to use, because you only get one opportunity with this pen, because this is a liquid paint pen. You don't want to mess up what you're trying to write, so it needs to be easy to hold. And I think they have nailed this. That is, I'm thinking about words all the time. I think they've nailed that. This is a very easy pen to hold, ergonomics-wise, and it's pretty comfortable to hold as a whole. Well, I definitely have to say. Means the tip of it is white, and that's pretty much all there is to the pen as a whole. Overall, not a bad looking pen. We can see the actual Tip itself is felt. Just feeling that it is like a dry felt, I definitely have to say. There's no ink in this yet, but it's very much a dry felt, just kind of squeezing it. It definitely is much more firm than not, I definitely have to say. I'm not sure how well this tip would hold up if you use it on concrete a decent amount. Frankly put, I feel like it would kind of get scraped off, especially if it's rough concrete. I think on metal and wood, this probably will keep its shape very well, but I'm not sure about on like rough concrete or something like that kind of thing. But, you know, I do suppose without further ado, there's really only one more thing left for me to do, and that is to go ahead and actually get this pen all ready to actually use. And to do that, I have to kind of press down on the pen just a little bit and actually get it all ready. So let's go ahead and just press down, press down, press down, press down, press down, press down, press down. And I can see a little bit of white ink coming into the nib now. So let's go ahead and just keep doing that. Shake it up just a little bit as well. And I can definitely smell. This pen definitely has a very intense smell. You can definitely smell this pen. I honestly would not recommend using this pen inside like I am doing today, but that is what it is. Right off the bat, much thicker ink than not. Very, very, very nicely colored white ink as well. It is pretty rich. It is pretty deep ink, but immediately at least, it's not completely opaque. You can definitely see a little bit of the black through it for sure, especially as it dries. All of this ink has dried now. I'm just going to go and put the cap on. It's really smelling, y'all. But now that the ink has dried, it was much more opaque when I first put it on. Like the 2 dots right here from it, those are very opaque, but there's also a lot of ink there. But when you're just kind of drawing normally, it's definitely not the most opaque. It definitely starts off quite opaque, but it definitely dries, and you can definitely see some of the background through it. Not a super big deal for a work pen that you're just trying to jot stuff down on materials with and whatnot kind of thing, but bigger deal for an artist pen. So as an artist pen, if you're looking for a pen that's going to give you a really bright, opaque, white paint color, this might not be the pen for you, but this was just a test kind of thing. I'm going to go and take a little bit of a sip of water real quick. Hopefully this is going to help me have to stop clearing my throat. Excuse me. And I think that was it in all honesty. My throat feels so much better now. Let's go ahead and just do another little test real quick. Let's just draw a little bit of a smiley face. Just like that. And that's pretty horrifying if I do say so myself. As a whole, this pen is quite noisy. It does definitely make a decent amount of noise when you are writing on paper, at least. Who knows about other materials? But, wow, this pen really, it does smell very intensely. Let me tell you all what, it really does smell very intensely. So there's definitely a little bit of a noise. It definitely has a decent amount of resistance on the paper as well. It's not the smoothest on paper. This is a work pen, though. Really no big surprise. I can definitely say, though, this pen is not meant for paper. It's really not. It makes a lot of noise on paper. Not a terrible thing, but it's also not smooth on paper. It's a much rougher sort of feeling when you have it on paper, and it doesn't move as smoothly on paper as something like, let's say, a Posca. A Posca is much more smooth on paper, in my personal opinion, but that's also a paint pen that is meant for paper to an extent, at least. This, on the other hand, is meant for like wood and stuff like that. Dang, and my throat's still messed up. I don't know what's going on, but definitely not the smoothest on paper, to say the least. Definitely makes a decent amount of noise, but, you know, not horrible. Let's go ahead and actually flip my sketchbook over to an actual page, though, so I can actually draw just a little bit kind of thing. And I think today I'm going to draw myself a little bit of a fish. I'm going to go and get this all out from under that, and I'm going to go and get the cap all off once again, and let's draw a little bit of a fish. And I think I'm going to start off the fish right about here, and I'm going to try to draw as slowly as possible. to make sure that the ink stays as opaque as possible. And yeah, we can definitely tell when the ink is first put down, it's much brighter than not. But as you watch it dry, it definitely, like we can see in comparison, like this is already drying and already becoming less opaque. The opacity on this is quite high. And now that it's all dried, it's definitely much less opaque than not. But as a whole, you know, not too bad. We can definitely see, if you want to do layers with a pen, this could be an interesting pen to use. Because we can definitely see where the layers overlap quite easily. Like we could see the dots where it kind of overlaps the different lines and whatnot very easily. That's something you don't really see on a Posca or a Sharpie or something like that kind of thing. But you definitely do see that on this drawing that was done with the Milwaukee pen. So if you want to be able to see the layers and whatnot, then this could be a good pen for you. How am I feeling about this drawing? It's not too bad if I do say so myself. I'm definitely not unhappy with it by any means. Let's go ahead and do another little bit of a drawing just so I can kind of get a better idea of how this pen draws. That was not very good. It did fade out just for a moment there. This pen is still new, so maybe that's why, but that was not very good nonetheless. Let's do an eye right there, an eye right there. And you do definitely want to hold this pen a little bit closer than not if you're drawing with it. You definitely don't want to hold it far back by any means. Definitely the closer the better. And you do definitely want to put a decent amount of weight onto the pen as well when you're drawing. Just with the texture of this pen, it's very easily thrown off. So if your hand is shaky and you're holding it a bit too light, it is very easily thrown off, I do want to acknowledge. So I do recommend holding this pen quite close to the tip, and I do recommend holding this pen down a little bit more so than not as well. You know, we can see, once again, the ink itself is fading very quickly. It's becoming less opaque very quickly. Not a super big deal by any means, but definitely can be a big deal to some. Not a super big deal to me, though, but let's go ahead and just compare that against. This was done with a, if I remember correctly, it was I think it was a Pilot. I can't remember what pen I did this with, but I think it was with like a Pilot gel pen. We can see the ink on this. It's very bright. It is very, very, very bright, very, very, very bold. This is not. This is not nearly as bright. This is not nearly as bold. Now, granted, this was done with a gel pen rather than with a paint pen or something like that kind of thing, but the sort of richness of the color is more comparable to that of a colored pencil than it is to that of a gel pen. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if that's by design. This is meant to be a replacement for carpenter's pencils and whatnot after all. And so as such, it would not surprise me if this is meant to be just as bright and just as opaque as something like, let's say, a carpenter pencil would be. And since the ink is pretty comparable to a colored pencil, that would not surprise me one bit. Let's go and do another little bit of a drawing real quick. What do I want to do next? What do I want to draw next? Let's see. Maybe I'll try drawing a little bit of a knife. Once again, just starting off, just faded just a little bit kind of thing. That is not very good at all. There we go, just like that. Just got the knife all done. Just like that. We can see the two eyes I did where I just kind of pressed down. Those are still quite distinctly more opaque than not, but where you actually pull the pen across, it definitely does fade a decent amount. And I think I'm going to go ahead and do one more drawing. And I'm trying to think of how I kind of want to finish off this video. I know I want to give you guys my final thoughts, but I'm just trying to figure out what I want to say. Well, what do I want to draw for my third drawing? What do I want to draw? Well, I'm thinking I want to draw, what am I thinking? I'm thinking I might draw, ooh, what do I want to draw? Thinking. What do I want to draw, y'all? This is a hard question. What do I want to draw? I'm thinking I'm going to draw. I think the smell of the pen is getting to me because I am not able to think of what I want to draw right now. Usually I just kind of have a couple ideas on deck. I'm thinking I will draw a square. You know, we can definitely tell it does kind of, if you try to move it slowly, it can become a little bit janky just due to, that's what I was looking for. Yeah, so this can be a little bit janky at times to kind of write on paper with. It's definitely something where the texture of the nib itself is rough enough. Maybe it's something that'll smooth out over time with more ink and whatnot. But at the beginning, at least, it can be a little bit janky. It can be just a little bit kind of tough to move it the way you want to on paper. So that is something to keep in mind. Let's go ahead and add a nose and 2 eyes. And one other thing that you'll have to keep in mind with this pen, of course, is that it does take 10 seconds to dry everything, so you got to be very careful not to accidentally wipe or anything like that, so you don't spread the ink by accident. Alrighty though. Well, I think that's the final drawing that I wanted to do. Maybe I'll do one more fish drawing. Yeah, let's do one more fish. Just like that. Not my best fish ever, but I will take it. Well, I'm gonna go and put the cap on because it smells a lot. It really does smell a lot. I do not recommend using this inside. I do not. So what are my final thoughts on the Milwaukee Inkzall paint marker, liquid paint marker? What are my final thoughts on it? Well, the packaging overall, more solid than not, more simple informational packaging than not, but it's definitely a little bit more distinct than not due to the red background. I definitely have to say it's very obviously a Milwaukee product due to the red background, as well as red is the iconic color of a Milwaukee product. The pen itself looks pretty good. It's definitely got a little bit of a different look than many other liquid paint markers out there, and it definitely feels pretty good in hand as well. It's surprisingly ergonomic, I will admit. Of course, the liquid paint does kind of move around, so the weight of the pen is a little bit uneven at times, but as long as you kind of keep holding it one way, you're all good. Unlike with some other paint markers, this one gets activated very quickly. I've had Poscas where I'm sitting there for like 5 minutes before trying to get it to activate, and it's just a pain. This one activates very quickly, which is much appreciated if I do say so myself. And as a whole, drawing with this pen was interesting. So the ink starts off very opaque, but fades very quickly. It doesn't fade to an insane degree by any means. It's still very visible on black paper, but it does fade to a decent degree. Now, of course, this is a white Milwaukee Inkzall, whatever you want to call it kind of thing. I'm sure maybe the black ones would have more opaque ink. Maybe some other colors have more opaque ink. White is a color that is a little bit hard to do with ink, so maybe that's why it's not as opaque as one might like. But either way, the ink still shows up on black paper perfectly fine, and it's really no issue in all honesty. It might not be as opaque as something like, let's say, a Posca, but it's definitely just as opaque as a Sharpie liquid paint marker, if you ask me. I'd have to say this pen smells quite a bit. Definitely when you're using it, you want to be outside. It smells quite a bit, to say the least. And the nib itself is quite rough. That's due to the fact that, of course, it's not really meant for use with paper. It's meant for use on rougher surfaces. So by having a firmer, rougher nib, the nib is going to last for longer. However, that is not such a great thing if you wanted to use this pen on paper because it does make for some janky lines, like it's kind of hard to control at some points kind of thing. It also makes it very loud on paper as well. Not a super big deal. Definitely something you can get used to, but something worth mentioning nonetheless. And is there anything else I wanted to say about this pen? Anything else at all? Overall, I will admit I have enjoyed using this pen in today's video. Is this the best paint pen I've ever used to draw with? It's not. In my personal opinion, white Posca pens are still better. Posca pens are definitely better for drawing with, that is. However, I think this is a pretty good pen for just writing notes on wood and stuff like that kind of thing. And honestly, I do think that this could be a good pen for tagging and stuff like that as well. Now, of course, I do want to acknowledge I don't encourage tagging or anything like that, but I do think that this could be a solid pen for that, especially the black version of this pen, where the ink is going to be a little bit more opaque than not, or at least I imagine so. I don't know if it actually is. Take what I say with a grain of salt, but I imagine the black version of this pen might be a little bit better at tagging and doing graffiti than not. And if I had to guess, it would probably be a little bit better than a Posca. And you can very easily ruin the nib of a Posca just because it's meant for paper. It's not really meant for used on rough surfaces. I think this might be a little bit better for that, and it might last a little bit longer as well. Well, overall, what is the rating I want to give the Milwaukee liquid paint pen, the Milwaukee Inkzall that I used in today's video? I'm thinking this pen deserves a solid for drawing. I do want to acknowledge that I'm not just giving this pen a rating for what it's meant for. I'm giving this pen a rating for specifically drawing. For drawing, I'm thinking this pen is going to get a solid 2 out of 4. And the reasons why it's getting a 2 out of 4 is because it's a little bit janky to use at times, and because the ink is not the most opaque. However, I do think that this is a high 2 out of 4 pen. It's not a low 2 out of 4. It's not almost a 1 by any means. It's almost a 3. But it's still a 2 out of 4 nonetheless. It's very comfortable to use. It's very easy to use. Very ergonomic. The weight is nice, although it can be a little bit uneven at times. But really, with it just being a little bit janky at times to draw with on paper, and with it, with the ink from it not being the most opaque as well, this pen does deserve a 2 out of 4 for drawing on paper at least, but I do think that if you're using this as a replacement for a carpenter's pencil, if you're using this to mark stuff on metal, and if you're doing graffiti or tagging or something like this with this pen, I do think that this pen could easily be a 3 to 4 out of 4, in all honesty. I do think it could easily be that, but for my uses, this pen is just not quite what I'm looking for, but it is still a more solid pen than not. And, excuse me. Yeah, that's kind of my overall thoughts of the pen. For context, my ratings goes from a 1 to 4. 1 being like, this is terrible, never buy this. 2 being like, it's okay. I might not buy this again for my own personal uses unless I had some other separate use for it. But, it might be good for other people's uses. A 3 out of 4 is like, yeah, this is pretty good kind of thing. I like this. I'd buy it again. And a 4 out of 4 is like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is a 2 out of 4. I personally would not buy this pen again to draw on paper with. But I do think it could be very good for some people's uses. But, I think that's all I had to say about the Milwaukee Inkzall liquid paint permanent marker pen, whatever you want to call it kind of thing. I certainly hope you guys have enjoyed watching this video, this little bit of a review on this pen right here. If you guys have enjoyed watching this video, this review, of course, please make sure to like and subscribe for more content. I have my Instagram, my book, my merch, my P.O. box, and my main channel all in the description down below. Go check it all out. But, thank you so much for watching, y'all. Till the next one, stay safe in peace and have a great one. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm saying.